All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back. It has been a long time since I've put a podcast out or done anything, and mainly that's because a lot of September I was out elk hunting or attempting to elk hunt. And man, a lot of research went into it, a lot of trials and tribulations for sure, but I'm trying to turn my attention back to this a little bit now. It was kind of like all-consuming, and I don't know. I got out there, so I'll go into it real quickly. If you guys want, I'll put timestamps so you can fast forward through this if you don't give a fuck. But I went out. The first time I went with my wife, which was nice. I had a little bit of company, and we were just kind of like, it was more like a scouting trip. I finally found like a good unit that I wanted to hunt in. Like I said, just kind of watching things. And then the second time I went out, I was on my own. And I finally, after looking around, hiking all these miles and stuff, I finally like found some elk that I wanted to hunt. And, my plan was to hunt them the following morning, and that evening I wanted to continue like glassing and looking at some other areas. So I drove to a different area within the unit, like probably a mile or two away from my camp. And on the way back to my camp that night, I got stuck. I mean, I was up to like literally like my thighs digging my fucking car out. And luckily, these dudes from Kentucky just came rolling through. They were like, yeah, we're going to head out. There's supposed to be a bad storm, so we decided to just pack up camp and go into town. They were probably the last people on the road I was on, but luckily they came through. They were able to pull me out, and all my fucking clothes, everything were just soaked. So cut the hunt a little bit short, which was disappointing, but learned a lot, got out there and got to do it. And man, I grew up hunting whitetails in Pennsylvania, and you got to scout and find them. I'm not saying it's easy, but like, you climb up in a tree stand and kind of hope that they walk. You play the wind. There's these factors, but it's a lot simpler, right? You're certainly not hiking like 10, 12, 13 miles a day with 40 pounds on your back. So it was a learning experience. I'll definitely be in better shape when I go next year. But yeah, it was fun. So that's what a lot of my September has been dedicated to. And then we just recently got back from one of my buddies from high school, had a wedding. So it's been a busy month. I've always, though, like, even with this, you guys have probably noticed that I'm very sporadic when I post. And I think call it ADHD, call it whatever you want, but whenever I get very excited about something, it's all consuming for me, and then I burn myself out on it. So I'm really trying to prioritize just like finding a balance, right? As opposed to getting really excited about this and putting out content and then just dipping away for 3 or 4 weeks or months. So, yeah, it feels good to get back and be doing this. Like I said, I'm always trying to like strive to do it on a more consistent basis, but really I think what it is I just got to find balance in my life. And like I'll get into an archery phase, right? I'll be shooting my bow, and I'll be shooting my bow like fucking every single day, and then all of a sudden I'm not doing jiu-jitsu. I'm only going when I have to teach, or I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just how my brain works. So I'm trying to turn that off and mellow it out a little bit. But anyway, we have a very exciting fight card coming up tomorrow. Poatan is going to be defending his title against Khalil Rountree. The 205-pound title was on the line. We've also got Raquel Pennington taking on Julianna Peña for the women's bantamweight title. So 2 title fights on the line and a big card coming up in Salt Lake City. I'm going to skip past news and everything. Let's just hop right into the fight predictions. And I haven't done a lot of research on this fight, but I know both guys. One of the fights that I feel like a lot of people think ought to be on the main card is Buckley versus Stephen Thompson, and it's a great fight. So I just wanted to shout that out. Make sure you guys tune into the prelims. I think that's one of the more intriguing matchups on the entire card, main card or prelims. So that's a great fight. You've also got Yasmin Lucindo versus Marina Rodriguez, Cesar Almeida versus Ihor Pereira, and Alexander Hernandez versus Austin Hubbard. Ovince St. Preux is on the early prelims against Ryan Spann. Carla Esparza, I think this is going to be her retirement fight, is fighting Tisha Pennington. So we've got a wife and wife duo, I guess, fighting on the same card. And then Court McGee versus Tim Means is going to open the night up. I read those in backwards order there, right? But like I said, Buckley versus Stephen Thompson, that fight's super exciting. I'm excited to see how Buckley looks against a specialist like Thompson after the performance he just had against Luque. So good fucking fight. He really seems like he's coming into his own. I mean, if you were to just do MMA math and look at how Thompson beat Kevin Holland, how Holland beat Buckley, you would probably think that Buckley is going to struggle a little bit in this fight, and he might, but he seems like he's turned a corner and he's really coming into his own, and he looks like he could, make that kind of run that gets you close to a title. So we'll see how this fight goes. But the first fight, I'm going off MMA Junkie here. I'm not on the UFC's website, but the first fight, it looks like on the main card is going to be Kayla Harrison versus Ketlen Vieira. And I feel like Harrison, man, is one of the most promising prospects that the women's division has ever had, right? And she's more accomplished in her judo career than Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey was a bronze medalist. Kayla Harrison's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in judo, right? So she's fucking incredible, not just good, she's elite at that level. She's probably the highest level judoka we've ever seen in women's MMA. And she's going up against Ketlen Vieira, who, you know, I'm going to sound critical and watch her have like the performance of a lifetime in this fight, but I just find her style very bland, right? Very boring. There's not a lot that she's going to bring to the table that I think she's going to be able to offer up to Kayla Harrison, and there's a reason Harrison is such a big favorite in this fight. The best chance for Vieira to win is probably, in my opinion, you got to keep it on the feet. That much is obvious, right? I mean, Ketlen Vieira is a good wrestler. If you look at her last fight against Peña, she did take her down. She was able to control the fight on the ground, all that good stuff. So she has good wrestling. But, man, I have a hard time believing that she's going to be able to wrestle and grapple on that same level that Kayla Harrison is. One thing I was thinking about, though, that really could help her is if she can just be there, right? Like, just be in Kayla Harrison's face in that, like, mid-second, third round, right? I think she has a good chance to kind of like make this more of a fight. But I really think that if this was a 5-round fight, I might lean a little bit more towards Vieira. But Harrison is like, she's super densely muscled, super strong, very explosive. And she's had time to like go through this weight cut and make 135. And she's already fought one of the top girls at 135 pounds in Holly Holm, right? And dominated her really. I mean, it was domination. She hit a throw and ended up on the bottom because she got rolled through by Holly. But she just worked her way back to her feet and really just kind of like put it on Holly and bullied her around. I don't know that she'll be able to bully Ketlen in that same regard that she did to Holly, but I do think that eventually she's going to be able to push this fight up against the cage. She's going to be more explosive when she throws her shots too, which I think is a big difference maker. And if Kayla Harrison doesn't get Vieira out of there, I think we're going to see Kayla burn really hot through the first round and a half, probably squeak the second round out, and maybe have to survive the third round, because I do think that when you're putting out that much effort, and Ketlen Vieira is a big girl, right? She's got a big frame. She's not going to be easy to drag to the ground, so it's going to require a lot of energy expenditure from Kayla Harrison to get this fight where she wants it to be. I'm interested to see how she handles the pace and everything. I do think, like I said, she might have it's going to be tough. In a 3-round fight, you can burn yourself out, right? And I think that that's where Ketlen Vieira could start to take over a little bit. Or if she can just maybe negate some of the takedowns and not get hit with some of those big shots that Harrison is going to throw early on, I really think Vieira does have a chance. But overall, if I'm just being honest and I'm looking at it, she's a 1,200 favorite for a reason. She's riding into this fight with momentum off the Holly Holm win. And it also, I know she has a loss on her record, and she's 17-1, by the way. She's got a lot of fight experience for as long as she's been doing MMA. And you can say, like Julianna Peña did in the press conference, that those are tomato cans, blah, blah, blah. But what I saw out of Kayla Harrison, the Kayla Harrison who showed up and fought Holly Holm once she got to the UFC, was her rising to that next level, right? I really think that she's where she's supposed to be, and she's looking like she's on the path to become the next bantamweight champion, right? It's hard to look at the girls in that division and think that Kayla Harrison isn't a tough matchup for all of them, right? I think that this is a big fight for Kayla Harrison because, like I said, Vieira does have she might have an advantage on the feet just in terms of, like, you know, technical striking, maybe keeping her punches and everything straight. But overall, I just think that Harrison is going to be willing to put it on her. And in a 3-round fight, I think that'll be enough to get her through. Like I said, I'm thinking a finish in the first 2 rounds for Kayla Harrison, or maybe we see it burn off a little bit. She wins the first 2, Ketlen picks up the third, and we start talking about how Kayla needs to work on her cardio heading into the title fight. But I think Kayla's going to win this fight. I just think she has too many weapons at her disposal not to win this one, right? If she doesn't win, I do think it's just because, for whatever reason, she wasn't able to get Ketlen to the ground and put the fight where she wanted to be. And that can wear on you trying to get those takedowns, and maybe Ketlen can take over some of the striking exchanges. But, man, even on the feet, Kayla just throws with that intent and explosiveness that I think Ketlen lacks. Like I said, I don't mean to be critical, but I never get excited hearing that Ketlen Vieira is fighting. She's just even when she's getting taked, it's just not, there's no explosion or excitement behind it. It's just like pop, 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 pop. She's good. She's very talented, but I just feel like Harrison has that wow factor. So, going to be exciting to see. I think we're looking at Harrison picking up this win and then fighting the winner of Raquel Pennington and Julianna Peña. So, yeah, big implications for the women's 135-pound division on this card coming up. Next fight, we got, this one's a little more interesting to me. Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. And I was surprised to see Kevin Holland open as such a big favorite, especially considering the fact that, man, Dolidze has fought up to 205 pounds. But then you consider Kevin Holland has fought Thiago Santos, Jacare. He spent time at middleweight before. I believe when he had his like undefeated run in 2020, I'm pretty sure it was in the middleweight division. So Kevin Holland is no stranger to fighting guys that are bigger than him in terms of just like muscle mass. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem for him. This fight to me is interesting because I feel like Kevin Holland and Roman Dolidze are both unorthodox in different ways. On the feet, Roman Dolidze is going to, he's going to be more of like, it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be very technical. He likes to turn things into a brawl. And I just feel like it's going to be very sloppy on the feet, right? And I feel like Holland has a big advantage there because he is not sloppy. His punches are straight. He's got that length, right? And he also is really good at throwing those kicks out, which help him to manage the distance. And he's also talking about the unorthodox style of like Holland. Even when guys like catch the kick and go for the takedown, I know his takedown defense and everything gets criticized, but he has great balance. And when people like, I forget who he was fighting, somebody like caught one of his kicks and he just started fucking boom, 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 teeing off on them while the guy was holding his legs. So I think a big advantage in this fight is going to be that Holland can hit guys where they're not able to hit him, and he does it in an unorthodox manner. And like I said, he's just a hard guy to deal with. He's got this kind of like awkward style. I do think his wrestling defense has improved a little bit, even though it could use some work. And for Dolidze, you got to feel like that's probably the best path to victory. But when this hits the ground, we're going to see some interesting exchanges, I think, if it does go there. Because Holland, despite the fact that he's not a great wrestler, and despite the fact that he maybe doesn't have the best takedown defense, motherfucker's got some jiu-jitsu. And like I said, he knocked Jacare out from the bottom. He just hit an arm bar. Granted, maybe the guy didn't tap on who did he just fucking hit with the arm bar in his last fight? This is going to drive me crazy. I can see his face. It's right on the fucking tip of my tongue. Michael Oleksiejczuk, right? He had him in that deep arm bar. So Kevin Holland has some wicked jiu-jitsu. And I keep using the word unorthodox here, but it's kind of true, man. And if you look at Roman Dolidze, he doesn't he doesn't do his best work on the ground when he's in top position. And almost all the time, if you're going to go to the ground, even if you're an expert guard player, I still favor top position in MMA. It's just a better spot to be in. But with Dolidze, man, the way he fucked up Phil Hawes' knee, the way he pinned Jack Hermanson to the ground, he's just so good at inverting and engaging, and he wrestles with his legs from the bottom, which is what a lot of guys, even at the UFC level, don't do. Dolidze wrestles with his legs when he's on the bottom. He inverts, and he's great at attacking and isolating your legs. He's great at hitting sweeps. He comes up on top, and like I said, that's just not something you see in a lot of MMA, especially at that weight class for a guy as big as he is. And at this level in the UFC, you don't see that type of grappling from the bottom. But he's great at hitting all these different sweeps, and he's really good at attacking like knee bars and stuff, which I think he'll be able to use if Kevin Holland were to ever take him down and get on top. You know, he's going to be able to use those to get out of those situations. Overall, though, I think he has a wrestling advantage against Holland. So again, in this fight in particular, I think he wants to be on top, right? Like he wants to be on top in this fight, but arguably does his best work from the bottom. I mean, like I said, he pinned Jack Hermanson down with that leg, captured that leg and flattened him out, got him belly down and just started teeing off. The way he fucked up Phil Hawes' leg, he's just very good at getting his hips elevated, inverting and wrestling with his legs from the bottom. So the grappling exchanges in this one, depending on who ends up on the top or the bottom, could get very interesting. I think I like Kevin Holland in this fight, though. At first, I didn't agree with the odds strictly because of the weight, right? Just because I thought, like, normally Dolidze is the bigger guy. He's probably going to be able to win. But, man, Kevin Holland has a fucking resume, right? He has fought so many guys. He's fought MVP, had a very close fight against Jack Della Maddalena, very close fight against him. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up is actually the Maddalena fight. And this is a big reason why I'm picking Holland. I think that they might be, I don't want to say evenly matched on the ground. They might be. They're just good at different things. So it's really hard to tell how this is going to play out for them on the ground. Like I said, Holland too, I mean, the jiu-jitsu aspect, there's a good argument that Holland does better work off his back and that Dolidze does better work off his back, right? So I don't know. That's where the grappling gets interesting, but the striking is where I think Holland is going to have a big advantage. He's just so precise. Like I said, he's got that length. It's going to be hard for Dolidze to close that space on him. He's very technical, very precise, and he's good at stabbing out with his kicks to keep the range. I just think he holds a big advantage there, and I think he's going to be a lot faster than Dolidze on the feet. So at first I was kind of shocked to see the odds, but the more I started watching the film and, just kind of looking at how these guys match up stylistically, I do think that it's a difficult fight for Dolidze. I think he's got a lot of space to cover. I think the takedowns are going to be difficult for him to get against Holland just because covering that space, he's going to be getting peppered with shots as he comes in. He's not going to have the speed advantage. I don't know, but if he just gets a hold of Holland, he might be able to bully him, wrestle him to the ground. Like I said, maybe it's advantageous for him to be on top, despite how good Holland's jiu-jitsu and grappling is. I don't know. I don't think he's a bad bet. I'm not so certain that Kevin Holland's going to win that I'm willing to lay down a bunch of money on him. I think with the way the odds are right now, let me look at let me pull the odds up here. But I want to say Holland was a minus 170 favorite the last time I looked. Goddamn, my computer's fucking crawling. Give me a sec here, guys. I'm pulling it up. Yeah, he's minus 162 right now. So the way the odds are, like I said, just with Dolidze being the better guy and with him being a very talented grappler, this could end up going Dolidze's way. So I don't think he's a bad bet at all in this fight. Let's move on, though. Like I said, I'm picking Kevin Holland, but I just want to see how this one goes. I feel like there's so many situations that this fight could end up in, especially Holland has an advantage on the feet, in my opinion. But when we get into those grappling situations, that's kind of what I want to see. Both guys are really good off their back, which is something rare. So that'll be cool. All right, next, we're moving on to a bantamweight bout between number 10 ranked Jose Aldo and number 11 ranked Mario Bautista. Aldo has had, I don't know if you want to call it a career resurgence or what, but man, he is performing really well late into his career. And he's also one of those guys who I always think is older than he is. I always feel like Jose Aldo is 42 years old, right? But he's only 38. He's just been fighting for so goddamn long that it feels like he should be fucking 50, right? I mean, 32-8. 40 professional fights. That's a fucking super impressive resume. And by the way, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He's beat Chito Vera, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font, lost to Merab, the current champ, and then he beat Jonathan Martinez. So this is a big... all of this, he lost to Moicano, and then he dropped 3 in a row. Volkanovski, Marlon Moraes, Petr Yan. And now he's been on a little bit of a tear again, with the one blip being Merab. But in the Jonathan Martinez fight, I felt like Martinez got in there, and I do feel like he got starstruck a little bit. It felt like he was sitting there waiting on things, and man, I don't think that Bautista is going to be the guy who waits on Aldo. Bautista's also a guy who, if you crack him, he likes to give it back to you. He likes to meet you with that same intensity level, and we saw that in the Ricky Simone fight. Mario Bautista has great takedown defense. He sends knees up the middle. He's got really crisp striking. He's really good. Bautista is well-rounded. And like I said, I just think his aggressiveness is going to shine through in this fight. I think that Aldo had a chance to tee off on Martinez, one of those younger guys that maybe was supposed to beat him, because Aldo just went out there and put it on him. Aldo is great at boxing, ripping to the body, but I think Martinez got caught taking pictures a little bit too often. And I think Bautista is the kind of guy who, like I said, when you bring the fight to him, he's down for a fucking fight. I think he's going to crack in return. And I just think the odds that he hurts the older guy with more miles on him is pretty good in this fight. I think Bautista's going to finish Aldo. And I hate saying that because I'm an Aldo fan. I would love nothing more than to see Jose Aldo pull off this fucking win and have the whole fairy tale come true. He starts making a title run, fights Sean O'Malley. Who fucking knows, right? He goes and starts fighting these top contenders. I would love all that, but I really feel like the miles got to catch up to you at some point, and Bautista is fucking good. Bautista's one of those guys, too, who when you take him down, we saw this in the Ricky Simone fight. He does a really good job of getting to his butterfly hooks, and when he gets the butterfly, it's not just one. You see so many guys, they'll do the right thing through a certain like stage, right? Or like there's steps that you have to take to get back to your feet. And so many guys will do things right, and then they never continue to chain things together to get back to their feet. Bautista chains things together to get back to his feet. It's not just like he gets to his butterfly guard, puts his feet on the hips, kicks the guy away in one big motion, and then they just get back on top of him because he can't get up in time. How often do you guys see that, especially if you're going up against like a Dagestani? Guys will create space, they'll kick away, and then they just kind of like jump right back on top of them before you can ever get to your feet. No, Bautista does a good job of getting to butterfly hooks and systematically working his way back up. He gets to an underhook, he gets belly down, and he builds himself back up, right? Not that I don't know that that's going to be a massive problem against Aldo, but Aldo's a veteran. He knows how to hit takedowns, right? We saw him do it against Martinez later in the rounds. Like if he finds that opening, he's going to take you down. And he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I don't think he'll be able to keep Bautista on the ground. And I also think that this is going to be a fight where Bautista has so many fucking weapons, and Aldo is really taking a boxing heavy approach in his last few fights. In the last few years, really, not even few fights. He's been boxing heavy a lot. And I think that when you run in to a guy like Bautista who's using all of his weapons, he's going to be using those kicks a little bit more effectively than Aldo. I think he's a little bit of a longer guy, younger, more aggressive, hungry. Like I said, I think he's going to be the type of person who's willing to meet Aldo. When Aldo throws those combinations, I think he's going to throw back. I like Mario Bautista in this fight. And I like Mario Bautista quite a bit, if I'm being honest. If I had to pick like one person on this card with decent odds to bet on, it's Bautista, man. I'm a big believer in Bautista. I think he's very, very fucking talented. And just that like look in his eye, like you could almost see in Martinez's eyes, like I said, when they fought, that he's like a little bit like he's waiting on Aldo a little bit. I don't think Bautista's going to wait. I think Bautista's going to take the fight to him. So I like Bautista, but we'll see how it plays out. Like I said, I'm going to be happy if Aldo wins. I'd love to see him win. I'd like to see Bautista win too. I'm a Bautista fan. So, but obviously the Aldo thing, the whole fairy tale shit, that'd be awesome, right? But we'll see. We'll see. I'm putting money on Bautista. I'm going to bet on him personally. Okay, next we have the women's bantamweight title between Raquel Pennington and Julianna Peña. Peña is an interesting case because she only has 16 total fights in her entire career, and she started fighting professionally back in 2009, right? So we're talking about a 15-year career. She's averaging like a fight a year, right? And for me, I know that she went in and she upset Amanda Nunes and she stood her ground. And honestly, I was watching the fight the other day, like rewatching everything, getting ready for this, and I almost started crying because it is inspirational. And something about the way she won against Nunes, like knowing the power that Nunes has and all the combinations that she throws together and just the way she knocked out Cyborg, for Peña to just fucking stand her ground and get in her face and just keep throwing punch after punch after punch and break Amanda down like that, man, you want to talk about an upset. That was fucking amazing. It was a great fight. But Nunes came back, I think kind of showed Peña who's boss. And for me, the biggest factor in this fight is, hold on, I got to take it. I'm just holding this here in like fucking perpetuity. All right. I think the biggest difference maker is going to be that Raquel Pennington has stayed active. That's such an important thing, especially when you're trying to fight in a 5-round fight. Like, I think that Peña could have her moments in this fight. Maybe she gets, but we saw when Pennington won the title against Bueno Silva had her moments early on in the fight too, but Pennington can just weather the storm. I do think that both of these girls are very tough, but man, it's hard for me on paper. Like if you're looking at them, it's hard to kind of take this fight and say, okay, this is how I think it's going to play out, right? Because they both have decent grappling. They both have pretty good boxing. I really just think it boils down to activity. Rocky's been competitive. She's been active. And Julianna Peña has been sitting on the sidelines since 2022? It's been over 2 years since her last fight against Nunes, and it was a loss. So I think if I'm putting money on somebody in this fight, it's going to be Raquel Pennington, based strictly off the fact that Pennington's fighting more often. And also, she's got the championship now, right? Like, she's got the target on her back. I think she's going to be riding high with confidence, even if she maybe doesn't seem it. I think her demeanor and just the way she carries herself makes her a little bit easy to sleep on, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of easy to overlook Raquel Pennington. But, man, she's a really good boxer. Like I said, she's tough as fuck. She's always there. She has good grappling. She's very defensively sound in terms of keeping herself safe in those grappling situations. And, I just think that she has a really good chance to defend her title. And you got to think, you don't want to start looking ahead too much, but you got to think that with Kayla Harrison fighting earlier in the night, that Kayla Harrison's going to be the one that is next in line for Pennington if she can win. Also, just talking about like activity, also just momentum, right? She's currently riding a 2, 4, 6 fight win streak over Marion Renault, Pani Kianzad, Macy Chiasson, Aspen Ladd, Ketlen Vieira, and Mayra Bueno Silva. So a nice little winning streak going on there. Her last loss was to Holly Holm, and before that, she beat Irene Aldana, right? So, I mean, she got knocked out by Amanda Nunes, but went 5 rounds with her, 4.5 rounds. And this is what I mean by like just being defensively sound. Pennington is hard to finish, right? Like, for example, of Julianna Peña's 5 losses, 1 of them's been a knockout and 2 are by submission. So 3 of her 5 losses have come by way of finish, right? Whereas Raquel Pennington has 8 losses and only 2 have come by way of finish. 1 of those at the hands of Amanda Nunes, and the other one early on in her career against Kat Zingano, way back in Invicta. That's in 2012 by submission. All the other ones have been by decision, right? So I kind of think I would not be surprised if Raquel Pennington goes in there and finishes Julianna Peña. Like I said, just the fact that she hasn't fought in so long, a 5-round fight can be grueling. I don't know. I just feel like I'm leaning towards Raquel Pennington this fight. I feel like Peña had that flash of brilliance and she captured the gold. And like I said, it was super inspiring. But right now, I feel like the play is to go with the hot hand. I like Rocky in this fight. Main event time. Khalil Rountree Jr. versus Alex Pereira. And this is one where people keep going back and forth about like, man, does Khalil have a chance strictly based on his power? And I do think that Khalil does have a chance in this fight. But I think a lot of it is going to have to do with the stance that Khalil fights out of, the southpaw stance. You have to think about Pereira's career so far and what a huge advantage that outside leg kick has been for him. And you got to think, man, if you're looking at your leg, like you got that nerve, the peroneal nerve or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know all the technical names, but you got the nerve that runs down the outside of your leg. That muscle there, right, is just not as like, also the angle that they throw out. It's just easier to beat that outside leg up and deaden it and make it hard to put weight on the lead leg. I don't really think that's going to be a problem for Khalil. Right? I think that we're going to see Pereira not throw as many leg kicks in this fight and really use his rear leg to start attacking the body. Because you got to think, if he wants to attack the lead leg of Rountree, the most available kick to him is going to be if Pereira wants to keep weight on his front foot, the most available kick to him is going to be the inside leg kick, right? But in order to hit the inside leg kick, he is going to have to come across the center line. Whereas if he's fighting guys in that orthodox stance, he can just kind of touch their lead leg because it's right there out in front of him. He can just kind of whip out. And that's why you always hear Joe Rogan say, oh, he never turns his hip over when he throws the leg kick because he doesn't have to. But if you need to travel across the center line to get to the lead leg for a southpaw to kick the inside of that leg, right, he's going to have to turn his hips over a little bit if he wants to attack that. And I feel like your timing is going to have to be perfect against Rountree because he's going to be able to throw counters when you do that. Another thing is if he wants to attack the outside of Rountree's lead leg, the outside of Rountree's right leg, right? Rountree is going to have an advantage there because in order to do that, Pereira is going to have to use his own lead leg and he's going to have to shift weight onto his back foot. And when you shift weight onto your back foot, you're susceptible to getting hit. So I would imagine that if Khalil's camp is looking at the way Pereira likes to attack the outside of the leg, if they attack the outside of Khalil's lead leg, that's a great opportunity for Khalil to sit down and throw some of that power that he has. Man, it's hard to pick against Pereira. It really is because I do think that he just has such a wealth of kickboxing experience that he's going to be able to find a way to solve these puzzles that Khalil might have to present him, right? That he might present him. I think that Pereira is going to be able to use those kicks to the body, and I just think his striking is a little bit cleaner in general. I mean, Khalil has some fucking insane power, don't get me wrong, but he almost throws a lot of his shots out wide from the shoulder. I think if he really sat down and straightened some of those punches out, he has a good chance to connect on Pereira. But the key for Khalil Rountree in this fight, in my opinion, is you've got to put Pereira on the back foot. And talking about the leg kicks, I think the leg kick thing is going to be fucking massive. If you can stay weary of that left hook, right? Because you know that Pereira can box a little bit too. If he throws that left hook and it lands clean, you're in trouble. That's what he puts everybody out with. If you can stay weary of that and not have to worry about the leg kick so much, you might have an opportunity to put Pereira on that back foot. Because think about how many times Pereira is fighting guys and just chopping at that lead leg, and then guys have a hard time putting weight into it. They have a hard time pressuring Pereira as a result, and because they also have a hard time throwing power strikes. It's going to be interesting because the power, I don't think, is going to get zapped out of Khalil Rountree because he's not getting that lead leg beat up. I really think that's going to be a big factor in this fight. But like I said, I'm expecting Pereira to throw a lot of kicks to the body and kind of find different attacks and different openings that allow him to start landing some of those big shots that damage guys. Another thing to consider is that Pereira is so much bigger than Khalil, right? He's so much taller. He has the reach advantage. And we see this time and time again. The most famous, or one of the biggest examples I can think of, is Gaethje versus James Vick. Or another recent one would be Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown. When you are fighting, and okay, let me finish my thought before I start hopping all over. You got to put the taller guy, you have to put his back up against the cage. If Khalil can avoid getting that lead leg chewed up, which I think he will, he might be able to apply pressure. And when you put Pereira up against the cage, when you put his back on the cage, he doesn't fucking like it. He starts throwing big hooks. Like Yuri put him up against the cage, and Yuri with that in and out movement was able to draw some responses out of Pereira and then sting him a couple times with some big shots. Khalil has that fucking game-changing power where if he can cut the octagon off, keep Pereira on his back foot, and put his back on the cage, that is where Khalil has the best chance to land his shot. That's really what I think the game plan for Rountree has to be if he plans to keep this fight on the feet, right? If he wants to go in there and get into a kickboxing match with Pereira, he needs to go out, be aggressive, put him on the back foot, attack the body, make him respect your power, and then as you back him up against the cage, that's when you start letting the big shots go, being wary of what's coming back at you. Because the motherfucker, if he lands with one of those hooks back against the cage or not, he can put you out. But you got to think, it's not like boxing or kickboxing where you got ropes. You can't lean back over it all the way. You can't lean all the way back. When the cage is there, you have a barrier, and you can only travel this way and this way, back and forth in an arc, right? That's pretty much all you can do. All of your ability to lean backwards is taken away by the cage, and that is where Khalil has to put the fight if he's going to get the finish. Getting this out in open space, man, it's going to be a tough fucking task. But if you can just kind of bully Pereira, which is going to be hard to do, and get him moving backwards, that's where I think Khalil can find a lot of success, right? Like I said, I don't think Khalil's going to have any sort of advantage in the kicking department, but I just think that if he can keep his fucking chin down, hands up, march Pereira down, cut the octagon off well, and fight for the outside foot position, he might be able to do this, man. He might be, but I haven't seen a reason to doubt Poatan yet. So I'm picking Alex Pereira, but with the way the odds are, and like I said, just those leg kicks, keeping all that in mind, go back and watch the Bruno Silva fight. Anytime, he barely threw any leg kicks in that fight in the second and third round. And when he threw the leg kicks to the outside on a southpaw, Bruno Silva would sit down on his punches and start throwing. Another thing that I do want to talk about is they're leading you to believe this narrative, and maybe it will be. Maybe Khalil will live up to that, right? That it's going to be this stand-up war, and it's going to be this fucking banger on the feet. They're going to be throwing punches. It's going to be a kickboxing match. But when Khalil Rountree was on Joe Rogan, he was talking about potentially competing in the Masters division for the IBJJF. So this motherfucker can grapple, right? Like he might have, and he's probably, just in terms of being able to grab somebody, and he's probably going to be stronger than Pereira in that regard, right? So I'm a little bit skeptical in the sense that if I was going to go in and fight for a world title against a guy who's proven to be one of the best kickboxers ever, and he's translated that success to MMA, I would lead everybody to believe that we're going to stand and throw, and then I'm looking for an advantage. I'm not trying to go out there and prove that I'm the better kickboxer. I'm trying to win the fucking world title. And if I feel like I have an advantage on the ground, that's where I'm going to take it. And don't be surprised if things change quickly and Khalil does kind of start getting into that mode where he gets hit with a few things and he's like, maybe my path to victory is through wrestling. I don't know. I'm just saying, if I was the coach of Khalil Rountree, and he might argue that you wouldn't be my coach then, right? I'm not fucking anybody's coach. I'm fucking making, but his argument would be like, you're not aligned with what I have in my mind, all this different stuff. I'm like, okay. But at the end of the day, I'm looking for advantages. And I don't know. I think that it just makes me wonder if he will end up looking for things that he said he wouldn't when the fight starts. But I do think he has a good chance on the feet. I do think all those things that we were talking about with the southpaw shit, with the leg kicks not being as readily available, man, I think Khalil could do it. He's just got to go out there and put the pressure on. If you see but the problem with Khalil is he likes to counter, and sometimes he like fades back a little bit. And guys like Anthony Smith were able to put it on him at times by coming forward. So I just think that it's hard to say you want to disrespect some of the stuff coming from Pereira, but you got to move him backwards. End of the day, you got to move him back, right? I think that's where you'll find the most success, where the knockouts will come from, and we'll see if Khalil can do it on Saturday night. I think that's going to wrap this one up, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it. Thank you for watching, despite, like I said, all these different hiatuses that I take with this podcast and shit. So much appreciated. Yeah, that's all I got, guys. Enjoy the fights tomorrow night. Bye-bye.